think you might know that we recently announced a paper on tax issues. So that will be an important part of my discussion, I'm sure, today. And I want to start by saying I'm here, as I have been across the country, to listen to your views. We have some important objectives that we think are important for all Canadians, including people that take risk and start businesses and help our economy to be so successful. Those objectives are really important to us. We also know that the only way we get to conclusions that are right for our country is by listening to Canadians, by putting out ideas that we think are the right ideas for our country. And whether it's in an election campaign or whether it's during the period in which we're trying to make sure that we govern the country well on behalf of all Canadians, that we hear your point of view. But I do want to start by setting the context. I think one of the things that we can certainly all agree on is that our economy is doing really well. We set about a couple of years ago to put in place some measures that we knew were important. We said that we needed to invest in Canadians. We knew that we were in a situation where our rate of growth over the last decade hadn't been what we wanted. We knew that one of the big reasons for that was demographics, challenges in terms of the number of people and the aging of the population, an issue that's particularly important in a place like New Brunswick where demographics are a particular challenge. And where are we right now? In the last reported quarter, we experienced 4.5% growth in this country. Over the last year, we've had growth that's been higher than we've seen in a decade. We are the G7 country with the highest rate of growth right now. Over the last couple of years, we've created about 400,000 new jobs in our country. And those are, in majority, full-time jobs. So things are going well in our economy. Here in New Brunswick, where we've experienced some challenges for sure in the economy, we've seen an unemployment rate that has fallen by 1.5 percentage points. So this is having a really important impact on our economy. It's also having an impact on Canadians that really need to be in a better situation. Just the Canada Child Benefit alone means that this year, year 2017, in our country, we'll have 40% less child poverty than we had before it was put into place. We have a corporate tax rate that's 12 percentage points less than the corporate tax rate in the United States. And our commitment is that we want to keep these rates low. We know that for small business people, that the lifetime capital gains exemption, which, as you will know, has gone up over the years, is an important incentive. So that lifetime capital gains exemption of $835,000 for small businesses, or $1 million for farmers and fishers, is an important incentive for people to use that small business tax rate, invest in their business, and create an asset that's going to make a big difference for them and their families. So where are we at? The Canadian business sector invests about 30% less than the American business sector in productivity-enhancing opportunities. Now, you will have heard me, I expect, talking about our tax system. You will have heard me say that we have a system that right now encourages wealthy people to incorporate so that they can pay a lower tax rate than middle-class Canadians. And that incentive is there in our system. It means that we've had a very significant increase in the number of people, number of individuals that are incorporating over the last 15 years. We've had a 300% increase in professionals incorporating over that time period. So that's a challenge. We think that a system that encourages one subset of the population to have a lower tax rate than the broad middle class is a system that isn't fair. And we do intend to work towards fixing that. So what we're hoping for is that we can encourage people to have more active business investment, that we can encourage people to create a continuation of this very positive economic situation that we're in right now for this generation and for the next generation and the generation after that. So I acknowledge, and it's important for us to acknowledge this, and it's important for us to listen to your views. I acknowledge that this is a complex problem to get at, that it's not easy to figure out how to make sure that the incentives are right, that we don't have incentives for people to incorporate just to get a lower tax rate, that we don't have incentives that aren't actually having the outcome that we might want, which is the kind of investment in active business that's so important for our economy, but also important for all of our businesses, because we know in the first instance that people who start a business, what they count on is an economy that's strong. People who wake up on January 1st and think about how their business is going to do that year, it's based on how successful the economy will be. It's important for me to hear what you have to say. And I will say, as you know, that I've been getting an awful lot of feedback, and that's really the way that it should be. I'm getting feedback from people like Perrin and others among you that represent chambers, and that's the way that it should be. But there are some things that I think are important for me to address before we get to our Q&A. There are some impressions of what we're trying to do that are important to lay down at the beginning to say that's not our intent, at least. So, first of all, we are not increasing the small business rate. We believe that it's important to keep the small business rate low. This is critical. Second of all, we want to make sure that you can continue to save in your business, to invest in your active business. We believe this is critically important. We know that for many of you, as you have your business cycles, you'll need to leave money in your business. As you have a long-term objective of making investments in your active business, that you might need to leave money in your business. Nothing in our proposals will change that. We know that if people are concerned that they can't incorporate because of our proposals, professionals or businesses, that our objective is to enable people to continue to incorporate. Nothing in our proposals is in any way intended to dissuade people from that. We want people to know that nothing in our proposals will change the ability for adult family members or spouses to actively work in a business. Additionally, I know that many of you, for those of you who are representing businesses, many of the businesses that you talk to, have been using the rules that we have to save for a long time. And what we want everyone to know is that anybody who's done anything entirely legitimately under the current rules, we don't intend on looking backwards. Anything we're talking about is going forwards. Finally, I want to address the fact that I've heard from many women entrepreneurs that they're concerned to make sure that nothing in our proposals disadvantage them or change their ability to be successful while considering the fact that they might need to take some time off work because of their family situation. And I want you to know that we're actively listening to those concerns. Our government's made a commitment to ensure that we advance the cause of women being successful in the workforce. We really understand that small business is critically important for our country. So thank you very much. Again, it's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward, Perrin, to answering some questions with you.
Let's start with number one from Jonathan, the Alberta Chambers. How will the minister ensure that these tax changes do not hurt the hundreds of thousands of middle-class small business owners?
I see there's 84 people who voted for that one. So that's a big question. It's an important question. First of all, I want to start by saying that really what we're trying to do here is to continue to encourage small business owners to make investments in their business, while not having an encouragement for people to go into incorporated entities just so they end up with a lower tax rate than they would have otherwise. We want to encourage people to invest in their active business and not be in a situation where the small business vehicle is just used as an investment account. I'm not saying that there's not a balance in those things, because some professionals will want to incorporate, and there will be some advantages of that. And many small businesses will need to keep money in their business, because that's the way their business works. So how are we going to ensure this? Firstly, we think that what we've put forward does continue a very healthy opportunity for people to continue to invest in their business. That said, we're getting comments from people. We're going to ensure it by hearing from people, and we've heard from thousands upon thousands of people, how it might impact their affairs. And so listening matters, and I want you to know that we are. As we consider where we get to, your comments, the examples we see will be taken into account. And what I can tell you is that our commitment is that we don't want to in any way jeopardize the strength and health of the small business sector. So it's in the forefront of our concerns as we move forward.
We have over 100 questions already in the queue, so let's keep moving as rapidly as possible.
Well, can I just, we have 100 questions. We're not going to get to 100 questions. I will say at the outset that we are committed to responding to you. So if, although the questions in some cases have their names, some cases don't, if you give us your question, we will get back to you. So if we don't get to all the questions, and we won't, we'll get back to you. So we'll find a way to do that.
Great, we appreciate that, and thank you. Question 2. Accounting firms think these changes are significant. Finance officials don't. Why the gap, and do you think that accountants don't understand the changes?
I think that our tax system is complex, and accounting professionals are pointing out that in the proposals, in some cases there are technical things in ways that we're looking to move forward that have consequences. I'll tell you that as much as I have found that the people that work in the Department of Finance are really, really exceptionally good professionals, I've been very impressed with the people, and I think most of you will know I came out of a business environment where I had a professional firm, and so I saw a lot of really great professionals. People in finance are also really excellent, but they can't see into everyone's tax planning. They can't see into every example of how people are doing things. It's not the way it works. So accounting professionals will point out, you haven't thought about this, you haven't thought about that, and we need to listen to that, because in some cases we might have thought about it, and that might be our intended conclusion, and in other cases it isn't. So I think part of the issue is that at what we're trying to do at 30,000 feet, we're trying to make sure people aren't incented in an inappropriate way to go into a vehicle that just is there for lowering their tax rate. At 30,000 feet, we want to make sure that people are investing in their active business. And at 100 feet or 1,000 feet, the way we've done it may be causing some things that we need to get at. So we are, and we've had many, many submissions, some of which we understood at the beginning were going to be complexities, but we might not have had a full conclusion. Others that we didn't. And maybe just an important point for people here to know is that in this consultation paper, for those of you who might have looked at it, we have 3 measures. 2 of them we have draft legislation, because we want people to respond to that legislation, and that's important. Those were the more simple measures. In the 3rd area, the passive investment income, which has challenges in its application, we don't have draft legislation yet. So we've identified objectives and what we're trying to achieve in a proposed methodology. So hearing from people about what this proposed methodology looks like to them and how it works is important, and that will inform us as we get to draft legislation, which of course is another stage. So lest you think that this is going to be done in haste, we still have to do that. Hasn't been done. And that will provide for all of you in this room and other Canadians to have your views taken into account.
remain deeply concerned about the proposals that have been made by the government, and also we are greatly concerned about the process that's been followed by the government. One of the questions that some of you had earlier for the minister related to process and whether or not it would be appropriate to have a much broader review of the tax system of Canada. For several years, the Canadian Chamber has taken the position that it's important that we do a full review of the tax system to look at simplification and to ensure that the system is fair. Our goal is the same as the professed goal of the government, and that's to ensure fairness and to ensure that we have a tax system that works. Our concern with these proposals that are in front of us today is that they may result in grave unfairness to family farmers and small business people across Canada, and that we may very well find that it discourages entrepreneurship and investment in Canada and has damaging impacts on the Canadian economy. We would like to see the government be prepared to set aside their current proposals, to have a genuine consultation period, one which would allow Canadians from coast to coast to be able to express their concerns. If the government feels that those concerns are unfounded, that there's a misunderstanding about what's in the tax proposals, that would be the opportunity for the government to give the information and to allay those concerns and to build public support for what they're doing. We made the offer to the government a couple of weeks ago that the Canadian Chamber would organize 25 public sessions across the country as genuine consultations with small and medium-sized businesses and family farmers across Canada. We did so. We said that we would do so without any cost to the Government of Canada. Unfortunately, that offer hasn't been taken up. As a result, then, what the Canadian Chamber and its network of over 400 chambers of commerce and boards of trade across the country have been doing is we are holding our own meetings.
We've been hearing from our members of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce on a daily basis on this issue. The response is unlike anything we have seen at our chamber in recent memory. What's being proposed by Minister Morneau is going to affect businesses of all shape and size from all industries, and they are afraid for their livelihoods and the future of their businesses. The federal government has asserted that they value the contribution that small business and entrepreneurs make to the Canadian economy. However, this appears to literally be quite untrue given the disadvantages of being self-employed. Characterizing the last 45 years of Canadian tax policy as loopholes is insulting to businesses that have worked within the rules in good faith to build their businesses, to save for retirement, and sometimes just to keep their doors open. Even those in favor of these changes must recognize that the short 75-day consultation period does not allow time for necessary comprehensive discussion and for stakeholders to determine the impacts of these proposed changes. For a document that's said to be centered around fairness, these changes and this process are profoundly unfair to business, with or without the government's rhetoric. But beyond whether you think the changes are fair, we should all be concerned with the negative and tangible effects that they're going to have on the economy, on jobs, and on entrepreneurship. Businesses are thinking twice about hiring staff. They're holding off on expanding their operations. They're thinking about opening offices in other jurisdictions. Every one of these decisions has a real impact, and as they accumulate, they will drag on the economy, which we can hardly afford here in New Brunswick or elsewhere in Canada.
Whenever a process from government starts to position business people and the business community in such a negative light, it is an absolute disaster from a communications perspective, and I think the apology from our federal minister to the Canadian business community would be appropriate. This minister came to us today with an open heart, I believe, and is willing to have a conversation. But on one of the main points that was raised today, the opportunity and the request to the Canadian business community to have a broader conversation, the kinds of things that we have been offering through Perrin's office to have a full and frank conversation and has been not embraced by the minister, tells me that the government of the day has a particular mission, and they're going to get it done come hell or high water. And I think that's a disservice to the men and women who've invested in the future of their company, their community, their families, and their businesses. And I think the Canadian Chamber Network has seen by what, in my 10 years in the Chamber world, the most fevered reaction to any government policy tells us that the fight continues, and that our best advice needs to continue to be positioned towards Ottawa on this important file. The minister said, and I'll take him at his word, that he is ready to and continues to listen. We need to do that. The reaction today from the minister, his expression, when the crowd called for a full and open review of our Tax Act, I think is very telling. The industry wants it, the minister perhaps not.
We've been in business since 1883. We're the oldest Chevrolet dealership in Canada. It's crazy when you think the first Chevrolet came to Fredericton, New Brunswick, but that's awesome. And the first thing I want to say is about the complexity of the tax laws today. They are complex. That's the reason most of us pay someone else to get your tax return done, or you go to Costco and get TurboTax and do it at home, but it's not simple. The second thing is I want to comment on these proposed changes. Number one, I have 3 children in my business. What does the reasonableness of work test, what does that mean? I've dealt with CRA before, and the way the CRA works is you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And trust me, you have to prove yourself innocent. It's not the easiest thing in the world. So I'm concerned about that. The second thing is my father went through the 1981 recession. That was really bad on business. We went through the change to GST in Canada. That was not so good for business. We went through another economic downturn in 2008, 2009. So what I learned from all those things is that I have to keep money in my business, because in a bad time, the bank knocks on the door and says, you guys are now a risky business because you're not selling enough cars, or you're not selling enough beer, or you're not selling enough dinners. So we have to have money in our business, so when the bank comes, I can say, listen, buddy, I'm in business, and we have a relationship, so just go and bother somebody else. So that's the reason for having money in your business, for a rainy day. The third thing is about the selling of the business. I bought the business from my father. It wasn't a gift. My father bought it from his father and 2 or 3 other generations before that. I would like to sell my business to my children. If I sell the business to my children, or I sell it to Ken, I pay half the tax with Ken, I pay double the tax for my daughter. I don't think that's fair. And you know, the long and the short of it is, I've heard it all day today, 75 days is not enough time to talk about a problem that is a huge problem in Canada. We're small business, we're the people that fund charities.
Tax professionals across Canada are saying that there are major implications for their clients in every community in the country, and yet the government says, don't worry, be happy. There's nothing to be concerned about. It's up to the government to explain why it is that these people are not going to be affected, because when all of the tax practitioners look at it and say there's a very real, direct concern that their clients should have, we share that concern. Because I'm a former Minister of National Revenue, and I know when you take the resources of the Government of Canada and pit them against a small business person, this is a very uneven fight that we put people into. It's important that the government spell out what it has in mind. And if they can reassure Canadians that there's not a concern, we'll be the first to applaud. That's why we want to see a fair, transparent process of consultations. What we're seeing in Halifax yesterday, it was an invitation-only consultation. Is that really a listening tour? And when you read in the press that small business people were knocking on the door trying to get in, and it was a locked door, that's not the way that if we want to talk about fairness, we should be dealing with Canada's small business community.